needs. Check us out on Facebook at Dirty Paws WHG or call 304-639-7754.
Calls and conversations continue in less than 3 minutes as the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe continues after this.
Hey, you know the NBA playoffs are here. FanDuel Sportsbook has a slam dunk offer that you won't want to miss. Slam dunk, okay? Right now, new users can get special plus 2,000 odds, any team to make the NBA Finals. Just pick any team, then bet $10 for your chance to win $200 if they make it. Now, this offer is even available on favorites like the Bucks and the Lakers, two teams expected to make the NBA Finals. Remember, the ball's in your court. If you pick correctly, FanDuel will get you your payout in as little as 24 hours. Why would you bet on sports with FanDuel Sportsbook? Listen up. Easy to use. Deposit options, brand you trust, types of bets, and many promotions available for new and existing users. All you got to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to get started, and be sure to sign up with promo code WKKX so they know that we sent you. That's FanDuel Sportsbook promo code WKKX. By the way, got to be 21 plus, present in West Virginia, new users only, must wager on designated boost market, max bonus $200. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net.
Frio Stack and Associates Auctioneers, Realtors, Certified Appraisers specializing in antiques, business liquidations, multi-parcel land auctions. Frio Stack and Associates is a regional business offering the executor, attorney, agent, and other individuals the most comprehensive and technologically advanced auction and appraisal services available. For information on our service, call our office at 304-233-3168 or email frioauc@aol.com. Frio Stack and Associates sells the earth and everything on it.
Now, during the Jim Robinson Ford Lincoln Toyota Pre-Owned Super Sale, select from over 80 vehicles in stock starting under $5,000. Most are local trades, many with one owner. Hurry to Jim Robinson at the Highlands, home of lifetime powertrain protection. Now, during the Jim Robinson Ford Lincoln Toyota Pre-Owned Super Sale, select from over 80 vehicles in stock starting under $5,000. Most are local trades, many with one owner. Hurry to Jim Robinson at the Highlands, home of lifetime powertrain protection.
Oh, there's something so real about living local, and I know without a doubt I'm not alone. And I love living local. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Say I'm loving living local. WTRF is working for me. The Ohio Valley is where I love to be.
From the Watchdog, here's your local weather forecast for your Wednesday. Showers with a possible thunderstorm, high of 85. Tonight, mostly cloudy with showers and thunderstorms, a low of 68. And for your Thursday, expect showers with the possibility of thunderstorms and a high of 83. And that's your local weather forecast from the Watchdog.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
You all ready for the big show?
I guess so.
Turn on that radio and back it.
You've got to ask yourself one question.
Guess what the day is?
Hump day.
It is Wednesday. We're like halfway through the week.
Here's the real question.
Do any of you people do any actual work?
No, not really.
Why is that?
We're on the radio.
That was beautifully put.
We're on the air.
Radio talk.
It's showtime.
This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe and Brad Leonard behind the board in the producer's chair.
What are we talking about today? In a handful of minutes, Wheeling's mayor is going to join us. Glenn Elliott is reactivating a charter-required economic development committee, and we'll talk to the mayor about what it is he's expecting from this committee and who he's going to appoint to it and what their goals might be, and so on. COVID cases up in Mon County, and there is a crackdown on the bars in Morgantown. COVID concerns have caused cancellations of some fall events, including Ogilvy Fest, 43rd annual one, off the agenda for this year. Senator Manchin continues raising concerns over post office operations. Plus, we'll talk about UFOs and food delivery and texting and jetpacks, among other things. Weather-wise, as you heard Biffy mention a minute or two ago, it's going to be a rainy day, showers on and off, some possible thunderstorms likely this afternoon, daytime high of 83, currently 72 degrees at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, 72 here at my home studios, and 72 at the Robinson Auto Group Studios, downtown Wheeling, in the heart of the Ohio Valley. I saw some of you noted that you went to virtually, that you watched the Walter Reuther presentation from Lunch with Books at the Ohio County Library yesterday. I mentioned yesterday one of the most enjoyable times we had on the radio show in recent years was when we did a week-long tribute to Walter Reuther, Wheeling native who was a vital figure in the labor movement, and when the statue was brought of him was created and put into the Heritage Port area, we devoted a lot of time to that. I really, really enjoyed it. Talked to members of the Reuther family and so on. And yesterday, Lunch with Books was a special presentation on Walter Reuther, the most dangerous man in Detroit, the name of the book that the author who was speaking had written about. And I noted that several of you went to see that. I now encourage you tomorrow to take a look at Lunch with Books live stream at the Lunch with Books Ohio County Library program, The Struggle for Women's Rights, from Abigail Adams, who famously instructed her husband to remember the ladies, to Phyllis Wheatley, an ex-slave who became the first African-American and second woman to publish a book of poems, among many others, the lives and actions of women leaders in the founding periods of the United States of America. That'll be coming up tomorrow at the Ohio County Public Library on their Facebook page, and I think they have a YouTube page as well, so you want to check in with that. Looks like we'll have some more debate today over Governor Justice's proposals for reopening the schools. I see where Democratic gubernatorial candidate Ben Salango is going to join the AFT of West Virginia for a press conference this morning on the safe return to schools. This is from Salango's campaign. As part of the American Federation of Teachers Nationwide Day of Action, Democratic nominee for Governor Ben Salango will host a press conference to discuss school reopenings. I like this. Unlike a Jim Justice press conference, members of the media will be allowed to actually ask follow-up questions. Of course, we all know the governor sits in a big room by himself and keeps himself socially distant from the reporters who have to zoom their questions in and whose microphones are actually controlled by Justice's employees. So that'll be coming up today, and you'll hear about it, of course, at WTRF and the New News, I'm sure, and also check out our Metro News, the WVMetroNews.com website, where they'll have plenty of information as well. Ben Salango will be talking about Governor Justice's return to school program. So that's coming up today. Also, Senator Manchin yesterday visited another post office. The senator has been very aggressive in his questioning of the way the post office is running. He's talked about it here on this show a couple of times. Very, very aggressively unhappy with the way the post office is running. The simple fact they won't even respond to his calls or questions. Senator Manchin yesterday called on local postal service managers to have more control over the machines they use in their facilities. He toured the South Charleston Processing and Distribution Center. He had been there last month as well. The senator noted when he was there last month that many of the sorting machines at the post office in South Charleston were not being used. They were out of order. And so Manchin says, we have these machines. Why aren't we using them? And apparently the answer is we've been told not to from up above. You know, we all know that the new Postmaster General is, to charitably put it, trying to be more efficient. That's the charitable way of putting it. The realistic way of putting it is a political hatchet man for Donald Trump, and DeJoy is trying to damage the post office, maybe even destroy it, certainly to delay it, to make mail-in voting not particularly palatable because Trump doesn't like it. So you can take the charitable analysis or you can take the honest analysis, but either way, the post office is in the midst of big changes, and Manchin says, and I think quite rightly so, why in the world would we have these machines, sorting machines, and not use them? So he yesterday said local leaders of the post office should have some control over the equipment in use to better accommodate the demand that is needed. And we're going to see a whole lot more demand because of the absentee voting this year. We're not going to do actual total mail-in voting. Well, actually, we are in Ohio County in the sense that if you're in Ohio County, you will automatically get a ballot application for a mail-in ballot. But across the state, you have to apply for your application. But we're going to see a whole lot more. 48,000, close to 50,000 registered voters already have filed their absentee ballots. When we talked to Mac Warner earlier this week, about half of those were done through the govotewv.com portal, and another half were done by people calling county clerk offices personally around the state. But either way, Senator Manchin said yesterday, processing and distribution centers need to be able to utilize all of their machines to handle the volume of mail. And right now, they don't have that ability. And why would it not be in the hands of the local folks? So, some thoughts from Senator Manchin on that. Again, he's talked about it here on this show in the past, and maybe we'll again. We might get him on here in the near future again. All right, it's 8:16 here on the Watchdog Morning Show. The charter in the city of Wheeling, which was established in 1992, created an economic development commission that the mayor of the city, whomever he or she might be, would create and would have access to. We haven't heard much about that in recent years, but apparently Wheeling Mayor Glenn Elliott wants to revitalize that, reinstitute that. They had first reading of an ordinance to do so last night, and I wanted to invite the mayor on this morning to talk a bit about that. Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning, Mr. Monroe.
So this has been kind of lying dormant for a while. There has been an economic development committee over the years. I know that in the beginning when the charter was first established, that Mayor Liphart back then created an economic development committee. I think Mayor McKenzie did. I lose track of whether Mayor Sparshane did or not. But it's been kind of dormant or at least silent for a while. What prompted you to decide it's time to revitalize or reactivate this?
Well, Howard, it really started with doing a reflection of my first 4 years in office, things I did well, things I probably didn't do as well as I would like. I think if there was one takeaway I had where there was some room for improvement it was in getting folks from the business community more engaged in the process early on before we put ideas out there. I think sometimes it helps to have sat around the table with folks from all different walks of life, especially from the business community, and get their input early on in the process. I think one of the criticisms we heard was you didn't get buy-in early on, and I think looking at models for ways other cities have done this, and actually just going back and looking at the charter itself, it turns out what's in the charter is already there, was designed just to do exactly just that. I actually reached out to former Mayor Liphart. Anytime I have a Wheeling history question from around the time he was a mayor, I send him a message on Facebook, and I ask him a couple words, and he'll give me a 10-paragraph answer. He's been very generous in sharing his thoughts and feelings from back in the day, and I can't thank him enough because I wasn't living in Wheeling at that time. I was away in college working elsewhere, so he's been a great resource. And he said this commission was basically designed to do just that, to give the mayor sort of a platform to sit down and reach out to folks from the business community and get some buy-in and actually work on economic development projects together. For whatever reason, this actual commission has been dormant at least since he was in office. There may have been other different commissions or committees set up, but I talked to city staff, and it's not been active since at least the 1990s. So it's been there. It's not been utilized. I felt like it's something worth giving a shot. So we dusted off the charter, and we'll have the second reading here in 2 weeks.
The commission will include some city officials, the mayor, the city manager. I'm not sure who all will from inside City Hall. But the idea is to get additional outside input into this as well, correct?
Yes. If you look at the charter, the commission is 11 people. 3 members of city council. It's the city's development committee. So basically the mayor, right now the membership is me, the vice mayor, and Councilman Thorngate, and the city manager. So 4 people from the city building, and then 7 people, I suppose, to represent sort of a broad swath of the local business community. So, I have some people in mind. I've spoken to a couple people about this, but we haven't made any final decisions yet on the actual membership of it. But, it's 11 people. It's not designed to meet monthly or regular or anything. I think it really just is going to meet sort of on an as-needed basis. But it would be chaired by the mayor. I would like to, the ordinance we set up actually calls for a vice chair for the commission. So I'd like to have someone from that business community serve as the vice chair and have the authority to call meetings as well.
Mr. Mayor, as you have talked to some business leaders about this possibility, some you may ask to be on the commission, maybe just some you're just chatting with, what's the sense you've gotten from business leaders you've talked to about how they feel about their input being received in the city of Wheeling?
Well,
the government of the city of Wheeling.
Certainly, I think a lot of us recognize we all sort of want the same things. We want to see the city grow. We want to see economic investment. We want to see people start moving back to Wheeling and staying here. I think sometimes there's a sense that the city is going to do what it's going to do, but it's not going to listen to us, or it's not going to, it doesn't want to hear our perspective on these things. But that's not true, but sometimes perception can be reality. During my first term in office, the vice mayor and I in particular had a lot of meetings with different business leaders across the city on a variety of topics. I know other members of the council did as well. But we did do it in a way that I think on any particular project, projects sometimes or ideas, whatever initiatives, I get put into the public discourse, and sometimes there's a newspaper story and then there's a reaction to it from members in the business community. There wasn't a sense all the time that everybody was kind of working towards the same thing from early on in the process. And I think getting that input early on in an organized way before you go public with something, or before an idea becomes fully hashed out, I think makes more sense. That was some of the feedback. And to be completely fair, during the mayoral campaign, I think this was mentioned in the newspaper over the weekend, one of my opponents actually suggested doing something exactly like this. Like Chris Hamm had a suggestion for an advisory committee of local business owners. It's one of his ideas that I've really liked, actually. So the idea has been there. I think there's a perception we need to do more in this regard, and I think we need to make sure that perception does become reality, and that we are listening, and that we're not trying to work against our local business community, but work with them towards a lot of shared goals.
Many years ago, I was very active in the Chamber of Commerce. I was a member of the Ambassadors Club and all that kind of stuff. And I remember when I first began to realize that there was some tension between the Chamber of Commerce as an entity and business leaders in general and the government of the city of Wheeling. And I remember being surprised at that, and naive as I was, saying, what? Aren't we all aiming for the same thing? Don't we all want success for the city in primarily the same kind of way? And there's always been a little bit of tension between the government and the business community, and I don't understand why that's necessary. It just doesn't make sense to me. We're all aiming for the same goals, I would think.
You would think, and I think, I know a lot of people on the chamber board, and, I've sat down with members of the chamber before on a variety of issues. There's not always agreement with what the city wants to do. You look at the biggest, probably the most controversial thing I did in my first 4 years of office was have the crazy idea of changing the direction of traffic on a couple streets downtown. You remember it very well, Howard.
I certainly do.
In cities across the country, the local chambers of commerce have supported those efforts to take one-way traffic loops and make them into two-way traffic to stimulate economic investment downtown. In Wheeling, our local chamber didn't do that, and I think I kind of blame myself for a little bit about it because, once again, we put the idea out there without really sitting down and explaining it to members up front. We were always kind of playing defense and explaining it after the fact, but I think a lot of folks from that community just saw it as an impediment and not as an actual asset for investment. So that's one of the lessons learned right there. I think had I gone about it a different way, had I got people around the table, showed them the benefits of this, and asked for input early on, it could have been a different outcome. I'm not trying to rehash that by any means or any stretch, but that's an example to me where getting people involved early on in the process and getting some input could lead to a better outcome.
Yeah, having the conversation early as opposed to a reactive conversation does make a lot of sense. And with due respect, sir, that's been part of the problem, I think, in the past 4 years. There's been a lot of ideas proposed. Next thing you know, talk show hosts and newspaper editorials take criticism of it, and then everybody else reacts to all of that, as opposed to, I mean, that's been a problem these past 4 years.
And that's a broader question. So, one of the things that when I ran 4.5 years ago, I emphasized was the notion of transparency. And transparency is a double-edged sword, because I think this council, if you compare the prior council and the current council to councils of years past, we've been very, very transparent, but sometimes that transparency means talking about ideas or getting ideas on the front page of the paper before they've been fully vetted throughout the community and hashed out. And that can sometimes, I think we did it with the best of intentions, but sometimes it doesn't always lead to the best outcome, because, if an idea is put out there before it's fully hashed out, then there's going to have areas of that idea that haven't been fully hashed through, and they're going to be easy targets to criticize. And so, yes, the mayor puts city council in sort of a reactive position, and that's not where you want to be. So this is really, all this commission is just a way to look back at my first 4 years and say, what could I have done better? And I do want this commission to be something that actually has some real value and some real input. I'm going to try to, assuming the council approves it here in 2 weeks, I'm going to try to staff it with people from different sort of walks of life who do have some input and things that I think I need to be heard, because at the end of the day, Howard, you have to be right. We all want the same thing. We want to see Wheeling thrive and prosper. We want to see it stop being a place where people grow up, turn 18, and then go away and never come back. That's been the story for too many years of our lives. And to a certain extent, the business community and city council want the same things. We just always don't sort of agree on how to get there.
Just a real quick process question. Why does council have to approve an ordinance if this is already part of the city charter? That's not a criticism. I'm just curious. I would assume that you could just appoint the commission and move on.
You could. We wanted the charter only, I think it has 3 or 4 sentences about this. It doesn't have a lot of the specifics on who can be in this commission, when it meets, how it meets, if there's going to be vice chair, whether Robert's Rules of Order are going to apply, all those different things. So the charter is pretty vague. So I sat down and talked about it with the city solicitor and felt that an enacting ordinance would make some sense. Arguably, we could have done it without it, but in the ordinance, there's a lot more specificity on how it will meet, and the fact that it will have bylaws of its own in this process and how meetings can be called. There's just not a lot of info in the charter. There's just sort of a guideline there. So this is just a little bit more, but I think what will be created here is very much consistent with what was intended.
You've talked sort of a big overview of what you have in mind on this. Give me a little more detailed sense of what you hope to come out of this commission. I mean, do you anticipate a set of goals or goals or suggestions of direction for the city, or do you anticipate it being more focused on individual projects? When something comes up, you would call this committee together and say, what are your thoughts on this? Or are you going to charge them to start thinking about the economic future of the city as a general way? I mean, give me a greater sense of what you expect from this commission.
I think there's going to be a little bit of both of those directions. Obviously, as projects come up, from time to time, you're going to want to get some specific input. We have projects right now that are already in the hopper that we could use a lot of input on. We have the OVMC property that, as you know, that's a 750,000 square foot complex where, a lot of input from the local business community on how to market that, on how to package that for outside investment, could be very, very helpful, especially if the cracker plant were to happen. And that's something that I think, we'll be asking for input a lot on the best way to handle those OVMC properties for the community going forward. But I also think it'd be helpful for this commission to look at things just from a general sort of overview. What can the city do better in the way it does outreach, in the way it taxes folks? Nobody likes to be a no tax, for example. Are there ways we could work with the state to change the way that tax works? Are there ways we could be a little bit more efficient in the way we go about business? So I think a little bit of both. I think the first meeting we would probably have, aside from just a general sit down to get to know everybody, would be asking for some assistance and guidance on how to best market the OVMC properties.
That project, in talking to Bob Heron about it here on the air this week, is becoming very real now.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say we're going to buy it. Now you've actually got to manage it and prepare it for sale, or prepare it to preserve until sale and so on. And I got the sense from the city manager that there's a lot of detail that has to go into getting that stuff ready.
It's everything I think we thought it would be, and then some. One of the concerns going into the winter months, you want to keep the building heated so there's no major deterioration there, and that just getting that boiler system up and running and functional throughout 750,000 square feet of building is a big undertaking, and it's something I know the city staff is spending some time on it. But the good news is we've already been able to put a portion of the property to use. Wheeling Hospital is going to be moving into the former Harmony House site there. That's a great. For me, that's a win-win for the community. It's taking advantage of a space which will work for their needs. It's a space that folks are familiar with. I think it probably work better during the winter months for COVID-19 testing. Obviously, one of the buildings is already under design work right now to become our police headquarters here going forward. So we just got to do it building by building and figure out which ones probably do need to be torn down. I think the nurses' residence is probably the primary candidate for tearing it down at this point based on its deterioration over the years. But it's a big undertaking, and City Manager Heron is, he's got his hands full with this a lot because it's a big undertaking for the city. But at the end of the day, if we're able to package these buildings up and put them in and get them back into the private sector sooner rather than later, I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
I am not advocating for this next comment, or this next item, but I'm curious whether you think it might be time to do this or not. And I'm talking about, is it time to bring on a more aggressive economic development specialist for the city of Wheeling? Kurt Zendy carries that title, or I think he carries that title, but Kurt's got other responsibilities now. You have the OVMC property, you have the 19th Street property. Is it time to maybe, and with due respect to you and the city manager and everybody else, you guys aren't property developers per se. Is it time to bring somebody on who can do that, who has more background in that?
Well, I certainly think that's a topic to be discussed by this commission going forward. There are some folks who think that the government doesn't really have an active role in economic development, but other folks feel differently. I think, the government's role is to facilitate investment where it otherwise would not happen. And, Howard, you're absolutely right. None of us on city council, including the city manager, are employed as property developers, and that's something, it's kind of a specialty. Does it make sense for the city to go out and hire somebody specifically for that? That's a fair question. We do have, in addition to the OVMC properties now, we're taking on the 19th and Jacob Street property as well, and the idea there is to position that property for future economic development. So it's something to look at. I can see some folks pushing back on that, saying that's not really the business of the city. But if you look across the country, cities that are thriving do have an active role in economic development to some extent, especially on cleaning up brownfields or dealing with properties that the private sector has decided they do not want. That's where cities actually can play a very, very important role and step in, because if you take away the profit motive sometimes and just look at what's best for the community going forward, I think there's a role that cities, states, counties, everything have to play in economic development. But the question is, what is that role?
And there's plenty of room for debate about that. I'm going to ask you one more question about whether it is a proper role or not in a second. But given that this council has already chosen to purchase the OVMC property and has already done so, and is in the process of purchasing 19th Street, whether or not it's the right thing to do, it is a done thing, so you got to do something with it now. Again, it just strikes me that now's the time to maybe find somebody who knows how to really do this. But I'm not sure I'm going to advocate that. I just raise that as a question. I do raise this as a question, though, final one for you this morning, Mr. Mayor, and it slightly veers us into a slightly different subject, but economic development, buying OVMC property, buying 19th Street, the public safety building, the police headquarters, all of those kind of things, the big picture projects. One of the things an awful lot of citizens have been much more concerned about in the past few weeks and months have been flooding in their basements and their sewers and coming off the hillsides and so on. It always strikes me that the city's first responsibility is the safety of its citizens, police and fire. Second, it seems to me to be the public health and welfare of its citizens, and I think we've got some problems here with this whole flooding situation. I noticed this past weekend when we had some heavy rains, a few folks on social media, you and I both love social media, we're suggesting that maybe don't worry so much about buying old buildings and actually fix these problems. What do you think about that? What do you think about where the priorities ought to be?
Well, this is another perfect example of perception versus reality. The fact of the matter is, going back to 2017, we did the first steps of a long-term improvement control plan to improve our city's sewer system. We started that. Actually, just in council yesterday, we approved the $2.1 million project for the Bedallion Lane storm sewer separation, which is right in the heart of the Edgewood area where a lot of this flooding is happening in people's basements. So if you look at the actual money spent, there's been a lot more money spent on underground work than there's been buying any buildings. The OVMC property is going to cost us at the end of the day not that much money at all. It's just it depends on what the final tax payment is going to be. But the 19th Jacobs property is $150,000. We spent tens of millions of dollars in underground sewer work over the last couple of years, with a lot more planned. One of the things we're going to have the conversation going forward is there going to be a need to raise water and sewer rates more to undertake some of these bigger projects as we go across the city? Our water and sewer rates are, if you look across the state, are actually pretty low. Nobody likes to raise water and sewer rates, but the way, under West Virginia law, water and sewer funding is to be funded through an enterprise fund, where you basically fund it expressly through water and sewer rates. You don't mix it with the general funds of city government. So that's a conversation we have to have. The Public Works Committee of Council is very tuned in on that. Councilman Sklavonakis ran for office in part because of this issue. This is one of his big issues, and he's brought it to the table. Every meeting I have with him, it's one of the things we talk about. And unfortunately, for a city with infrastructure dating back, some of our water lines date back to the 1890s. Sewer systems date back just as much. For a city with a lot of old infrastructure, we're seeing rains now with an increased frequency that was these systems were just never designed to accommodate. What we saw last week was like an inch and a half of rain in 20 or 30 minutes. A no sewer system we had was designed for that. And I drove around and saw a lot of places where there's some basement flooding, but that's the rain we had. It was a part of Hurricane Laura there. It was a highly intense waterfall event, which unfortunately seems to be the new norm. And we just got to get our city systems updated for that, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take money, and there's really no other way to do it. It's just going to take a lot of investment over a lot of years.
Mr. Mayor, I'll let you go. I appreciate your time this morning. I guess you're back again today at noon to talk more about your wheeling, no two ways about it.
Absolutely. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about now, but we'll figure out some way to make it interesting. But Howard, hey, thanks for your time today.
I appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Wheeling Mayor Glenn Elliott checking in this morning here on the Watchdog Morning Show. They are reforming, revitalizing, reactivating a charter requirement, which is an economic development commission in the city. It was put into the charter back in 1992 when it was passed, and Mayor Elliott wants to I think it's a good idea. I really do. I think you've got to get business leaders and government entities working closer together, not at odds, but closer together. There will always be some tension. they always will be at odds at one point or another, but I think you got to get them working closer together. All right, we've got a couple of fun things to get to before I turn things over to the Watchdogs. We've got UFOs, and we've got jetpacks, and we've got a really weird bar bet going on in New York City. Got all of this coming up here on the Watchdog Morning Show. You can join me on the text line, 304-214-1600, 304-214-1600 if you choose to, or use the CityNet hotline, 304-232-8255, 304-232-TALK. It's the Watchdog Morning Show for a Wednesday.
The WTRF Channel 7 News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Now it's time for your local news headlines from...
Biffy, I'll use those two cuts that I gave you, 12 and I think it was number 1, whatever those two cuts were. I'll use them in this segment. Okay, very good.
ESPN Plus having already announced that there will be no fans in the stands. Now, besides the opening week games and networks, the Big 12 also set the time for several other games, including the Red River rivalry between Texas and Oklahoma. The league currently has the conference title game scheduled for December 12, with the possibility it could move to the following week depending on the number of postponements during the regular season. As for the Mountaineers, the preparation continues for that opener. When the team's depth chart is released early next week, you'll see some names of first-year players who have earned their way onto the field. Arizona transfer Tony Fields, a linebacker, will definitely see action, according to head coach Neil Brown.
He really runs, and you can tell he loves to play the game. Plays at full speed every snap, great in pursuit. He's learning our movements, but he's got great energy, and he's physical at the point of contact. So excited about him, what he's going to bring all around to our defense.
Coming up tomorrow night, Coach Brown will join us for a complete breakdown of his team's preseason workouts. The Neil Brown Show will air from 6 until 8. Offensive coordinator Jared Parker, co-defensive coordinator Jamiel Adai will be our guests in the second hour. That is today's Mountaineer Report, brought to us by Kroger, the official grocer of WVU Athletics. I'm Tony Caridi on the Mountaineer Sports Network from Learfield, IMG College.
Does your dog need groomed or walked? Are you looking for a pet sitter or dog boarding options? If so, call Dirty Paws, Wheeling's newest pet care service, providing the Ohio Valley with everyone's pet care needs. Check us out on Facebook at Dirty Paws WHG or call 304-639-7754.
Hello, I'm Chuck Reddick, Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. We're working hard to get ready for tax filing season. You know who else is working hard? Identity thieves. Keep your computers and your mobile phones secure. Use antivirus software and strong passwords. Look out for email scams. Secure your home Wi-Fi with a password. Stay safe when you shop online. Look for HTTPS in the web address. See irs.gov for details.
Hey, you know the NBA playoffs are here. FanDuel Sportsbook has a slam dunk offer that you won't want to miss. Slam dunk, okay? Right now, new users can get special plus 2,000 odds, any team to make the NBA Finals. Just pick any team, then bet $10 for your chance to win $200 if they make it. Now, this offer is even available on favorites like the Bucks and the Lakers, two teams expected to make the NBA Finals. Remember, the ball's in your court. If you pick correctly, FanDuel will get you your payout in as little as 24 hours. Why would you bet on sports with FanDuel Sportsbook? Listen up. Easy to use. Deposit options, brand you trust, types of bets, and many promotions available for new and existing users. All you got to do is download the FanDuel Sportsbook app to get started, and be sure to sign up with promo code WKKX so they know that we sent you. That's FanDuel Sportsbook promo code WKKX. By the way, got to be 21 plus, present in West Virginia, new users only, must wager on designated boost market, max bonus $200. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Got a gambling problem? Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net.
Over 2.5 million Americans suffer from opioid use disorder. Treatment is not one size fits all. Medication-assisted treatment, also known as MAT, is the use of FDA-approved medication in combination with counseling. Remember, different treatments work for different individuals. The goal, no matter what the treatment is the same: help and continued growth and recovery. Go to helpandhopewv.org for more information.
From the Watchdog, here's your local weather forecast for your Wednesday. Showers with a possible thunderstorm, high of 85. Tonight, mostly cloudy with showers and thunderstorms, a low of 68. And for your Thursday, expect showers with the possibility of thunderstorms and a high of 83. And that's your local weather forecast from the Watchdog.
This guy knows so much about sports. They based the Sports Almanac from Back to the Future off of his dream journal. He's Bill DeFabio, weekdays noon to 2 on the Valley's only network dedicated to live and local talk radio, The Watchdog.
It's your turn to talk. From politics to pet peeves, get it off your chest and on the air. The Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe continues.
73 degrees now at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. Still 72 at my home studios and 72 at the Robinson Auto Group Studios downtown Wheeling. In the heart of the Ohio Valley, if you were watching Facebook Live or YouTube during the commercial break there, you would have seen I had a visitor come in. Little Teddy came in, grandson Teddy. He's been popping in here the last few days to visit with us. But Biffy, we had one of those grandma versus granddad kind of moments here, right?
Yeah.
Teddy comes into the studio, and granddad says, "You want to be on the radio? Look at yourself on the TV screen. You can see yourself there." We're having fun, and then grandma opens that door. "Teddy, get out of there. Leave granddad alone. Leave him alone." I don't care. I don't care. Let the little one come in. He's become sort of a regular part of the show this week for whatever reason. So, but that's just Grandma and Granddad. Grandma has those rules and regulations, and Granddad has the whatever the heck you want to do. Come on in, kid. We'll have some fun. I don't know what our game plan is today. He has not yet told me if we're going on a treasure hunt or not. Yesterday, he went on a treasure hunt while I was finishing up the show. He came in, many of you may remember Teddy came in, about 9:15 or so yesterday, and showed me his treasure map, and we're going to go on a treasure hunt and so on. And then while I was finishing up the show, he and Grandma went out on a treasure hunt all around the block, and the neighbors have now begun to help. The neighbors know he's going on the treasure hunt, so they put little things in the yard for him to find when he goes on his treasure hunt. So
That's good.
It's kind of cute. I don't know what our game plan is today, whether we're going to go on a treasure hunt or what's going to happen. Although Granddad's got to get down to the radio station a little bit later on this morning. Hey, I want to but alert you to an online auction coming up with our buddy Jim Frio Stack Auction Associates. Let's see. The online auction is, what is the actual auction? It's an online auction only, and the bidding closes on Monday of this coming week. So I guess that's it. It begins Monday at 10 a.m. So it's at 27 Major Lane, M-A-S-E-R, Major Lane in Wheeling. Let's see. I see there's a Buick LaCrosse there, a lawn tractor, grass cutter, Cub Cadet Signature Cut Series lawn mower, weed eater, digital Clavinova with bench. That kind of Whirlpool refrigerator, Frigidaire freezer, Hot Point refrigerator, clean household furnishings, couch, wingback chairs, patio furniture, and more. It's an online auction. This is online only. So you go to freeauctions.com to get more information about that. It is, and the online bidding closes on Monday, beginning at 10 o'clock. It's put on by our good friends, Jim Frio and Shane Stack. Frio and Stack Associates, always happy to help them to promote whatever they might be going on. Biffy, are you a texter or a caller? Do you like to text or phone call?
I prefer texting.
I do too, and a new survey is out. Overwhelming majority of people would rather have you text them than call them. And boy, I am absolutely in that category. Both you texting me, and if I want to reach you, I would much prefer to text you. My reasoning is simply this. You can text me or I can text you, and it pops up in your text box or your message box, and you or I can deal with it when we want to. If the phone rings, you either have to answer it or ignore it. Either way, it requires immediate response. And I would much rather text you and say, here's something I'm concerned about, or here's some information I want to pass along to you, or I do it with guests all the time. Senator Ehlenfeld, do you think you'd give me some time on Monday morning at 8:15? Give me a shout back when you have a chance. And then he'll text me back when he's got a chance, instead of me having to call him in the middle of who knows what he's doing, or anybody. And so I'm much bigger on texting. And pretty much across the board, people feel that way as well, except if you, and I'm over 55. I'm way over 55. People over 55 still prefer to call, not me. 72% of people under 39 would rather you text them. 61% of people between 40 and 54 would prefer texting. Now, once you get over 55, 35% prefer a text, 49% prefer a phone call. I have a couple of friends that prefer to call. John McCabe is a caller, for example, and I think that's probably from being a newspaper person. You want to call. You don't want to give them a chance to get off the hook by saying, I didn't see your text. John likes to call. So John's a caller very frequently. But I have a couple of other friends that prefer to call as opposed to text, but not me. I much prefer texting. And I thought I would share that with you. The vast majority of Americans, at least under the age of 55, would rather you text as opposed to call. And Biffy, you're in that category, and so am I. What's your reasoning? Same as mine. It's easier that way.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you can, it's easier, and I'd much rather do it rather than call. I mean, now granted, there are some circumstances where a call would be better than texting, but for the most part, I think for what we do. I think texting is much easier than a phone call.
In the early morning, as I know Biff is running around before we go on the air, Biff's got all kinds of things to do up there, getting the news ready and the weather ready and the traffic report ready and running the control board and so on before I join him at 7 o'clock. So every morning I text Biff a bunch of information, and I know it sits there in his phone, and he can read it and deal with it when he has time, as opposed to me calling him if he's in the middle of recording his Ohio Valley Road report or something. That's no good. So I much prefer texting. Anyway, and again, most Americans do. I thought that was kind of interesting. Well, the things that we're learning, people are paying attention to during the pandemic, Biff. The pandemic apparently has been a real breeding ground for, boredom, I guess, number one, but also conspiracy theories. And so with that in mind, this probably is not surprising. Since the pandemic began, UFO sightings are up 51%. Now, is it just that we're so bored, we're looking in the sky and seeing anything up there? Are we so bored we're beginning to hallucinate and make up things? Are the flying saucers paying closer attention to us now that we're, are we like a petri dish for them? They're checking, we'd better check the virus. What is this virus? We do not want to take it to Epsilon 4 where we live. I don't know what the reason is. All I know is that UFO sightings are up 51% this year, as UFO spotting apparently is become a bigger and bigger deal. Now, it wasn't a UFO. Well, I guess it was, in a sense, a UFO, unidentified flying object. Apparently, someone with a jetpack flew around right next to airplanes landing at Los Angeles Airport over the weekend. They were up around 3,000 feet. That's a high altitude for jetpacks to go. At least two different pilots saw this guy, I assume it's a guy, flying around with a jetpack. They called air traffic control to tell them what was going on, still trying to figure out who in the world it could be.
Tower, American 1997. We just passed a guy in a jetpack.
American 1997, okay. Thank you. Were they off to your left side or right side?
Off the left side, maybe 300 yards or so, about our altitude.
We just saw the guy pass by us jetpack. JetBlue 23, use caution. Person in a jetpack reported 300 yards south of the LA final at about 3,000 feet.
I'm really curious about that. Who is on a jetpack 3,000 feet in the sky buzzing airplanes? Now, I think it's a funny story right now. The next thing we know, it could turn out to be some kind of an attack or some hostile, who knows. But I find it, at this moment at least, it strikes me as hilarious. Some guy's up there flying around in a jetpack, looking in the windows of airplanes or whatever. I tell you what, the weird things are happening in this world today. No, Mr. McCabe, you're not un-American. I got a text from John McCabe. I got a text from John McCabe. So now I'm un-American since I don't text enough? No. I understand it. The reporter's background, it likes a phone call. That's all. I get it. I just prefer the texting. You're not un-American, John. You're a true blue American. You're a true blue American. And we'll share our American ideals together on Friday when McCabe joins me for the Ohio Valley Roundtable. But for now, it's time for me to say sayonara, see you, bye-bye, farewell. I got to go. I got to get out of here. The legislative watchdogs are coming up next. And then it's Hoppy Kircher with Statewide Talk Line at 10. Bill DeFabio Variety Show is not on today, but we do have the mayor in at noon today. And at 2 o'clock, it's Dancing with Dr. G, the afternoon drive with Donnie Gilbert today. A reunion of the old Whoop FM jocks. And that should be kind of fun. But right now, good Lord willing, creeks don't rise, bat phone doesn't ring, and don't get impeached, and don't retire, don't overeat. Ticker keeps on ticking. And Teddy says, it's okay, go back to work tomorrow, Granddad. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock when they go over to the big gig. Are you back with me, Biff?
I'm back for a Thursday.
We're going to keep on doing it till we get it right.
That could be a long time.
Indeed.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
The ABC News is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
By denigrating presidential...
All right, Biffy, enjoy your dogs. And I'll be up in a little bit. If you need anything, I'll be around, so I'll see you in a bit. Yeah, keep that. I'm putting that in my stack of stuff for tomorrow. Yeah, the barbet, the cut 12, yeah, keep that. All right, appreciate it. I'll talk to you in a little bit. All right, thanks. Bye.
The ABC News, New York.
Facebook and Twitter, meantime, have taken down accounts linked to Russia's Internet Research Agency, the so-called troll factory that interfered in the last election.
Facebook says it appears the accounts were working to recruit Americans, likely unwittingly, to do its bidding. They also directed people to a website claiming to be a global news organization, which on Tuesday released a message to its readers saying it was, quote, shocked and appalled at allegations it's tied to Russian propaganda.
That's ABC's Mark Remillard. There's a warning out about Labor Day parties and gatherings.